Hey everyone, welcome to episode 3 of the Emmaus Project. This week I'm joined by Pastor Dejan. Dejan is the youth director for the British Union and is legitimately one of the funniest humans alive. In this episode we talk about his upbringing in Serbia, his difficult transition to the UK, and some really key lessons he has learned in his time working with young people. Stick around because there are some real gems and lessons through perseverance, expectations, and even pancakes. As always, please subscribe and share. Dejan, it is great to have you on the episode, have you on the podcast.
Thank you, buddy. It's good to be here.
Where are you connecting in from?
I connect at the moment from the very lonely office of British Union Conference. Yep. Because there is only treasurer and the youth department functional. I think that's really good. This office is based in Watford, which is in some ways considered a little bit of a North London because we are in the circle of M25, the motorway which goes around. Yep. But it is a town called Watford, and it has 100,000 people. That's pretty much all you need to know, I guess.
Okay. It would be considered like Greater London, I guess.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah. So we'll just say London. We'll say London. Because that's easier for us to understand. Now, when I first met you, I have a couple of comments on when I first met you. I'm trying to think back what year it was. I have a feeling it might have been 2013 when you came to WA to do our teen shed there for our big camp. One, you were living in a boat at the time, which
that's right,
which everyone loved, and two, it was. I'm not sure I have laughed more in that 4 days since, like in the last 6 years as I did in those four days. So thank you for that. And
no problem at all. It's just my face. People just laugh. You see me like, oh, he's funny. Yeah, it's like it's not me. It's just face.
Well, let's go that they're laughing with you. They're laughing with you. But why were you living in a boat? And how did? I'm assuming now you have babies. So you didn't have babies then. So you live in a house like normal people now. But what are you doing living in a boat?
Well, I originally come from abroad, and so I unfortunately I need to say I had a really rich member of the church here, which is just behind this wall pretty much, and I asked him, hey, how can I own the house in England? And of course, England and Australia are very expensive when it comes to property. And me being an immigrant, I just could not ever see me owning it. And he said to me, actually, just before I was coming to Australia, and I was preaching, I think, in Melbourne, and he actually said to me, Dan, what about you buy a boat? And I thought he was joking. And then what we did together is we actually went and drove to the canal. For those who don't know, England has United Kingdom has 2,500 miles of canals. Yeah. This was what fueled the Industrial Revolution. And we went and we spoke with people, and I figured out with David. His name is David Boulderstow. He used to live in Australia as well. And he said to me, Dan, it's a good idea, let's do it. And what I did is I went, took a loan, and I bought my boat. And I can tell you that many people thought I was crazy, including my future wife probably at that stage. But my wife, future wife at that stage, she understood that this was the quickest way you can own the property in the United Kingdom and then save the deposit for the house. And that was exactly what we did. We lived 3 years on a boat.
Because it was cheaper, to buy the boat, like it's cheaper than paying rent and all those kind of things.
Absolutely. It's like rent in here is minimum £1,000 kind of stuff a month, and we were paying off our credit for about 400, and so we could actually pay off the boat in 6 months quickly. We saved it, and then everything else we put it towards the deposit for the house. So we lived on the boat, and it was great.
Yeah. No, well, it's something to tell the kids growing up. That's a nice story. Oh, yeah. Mum and Dad's first house was a boat.
Yes.
So you mentioned that you're not British. You work for the British Union Conference as a youth director there. Where are you from?
Originally come from Serbia. I was born in central Serbia in Kragujevac. It's a small city. Lived there majority of my life. This is very sad to say. Actually, I'm just on. I'm half.
You're almost British.
So
you're almost British.
This year, I think I'll be more in England than I was in Serbia. So I lived there through a beautiful period of my life. Also some tough moments as well. Serbia went through a couple of wars, and so we survived that. But altogether, it was beautiful childhood, despite the wars, despite the problems we faced. It was still a beautiful childhood for me.
It's definitely in that era for the Balkans was a pretty tumultuous kind of time, right?
Yes.
So growing up, did you grow up in the church? Did you grow up in a family of faith, or what was going on like for you?
I was born. My father was a pastor.
You're a PK. I didn't know you were a PK.
Yeah. That's the reason for this behavior. I can tell you.
The rebellious. I can see the rebellious streak.
That's right. And I grew up in a. I think we are 4th to 5th generation Adventists, whatever it is. And I grew up in a good Adventist home. I had an amazing father who was a pastor. He would sometimes have up to 12 churches as his own region to cover, but also had an amazing mom as well. My mom is with us, but the father unfortunately died. But mom was a really good balance in all of this. She was able to show us what faith is, and she was able to show what Adventism is. And she was really good shield when every PK got slammed by the church member or whatever it is, or it was a bad comment about maybe dressing or I don't even know.
Whatever.
My mom was always
something silly.
She was like, hey, listen, She was like, can you leave my sons alone, because they're normal kids as your kids. And she was always there to protect us, and we never had bad feelings towards anything when it comes to church, because Mom was really able to put us in a perspective to say, listen, everybody is human, everybody makes a mistake, and my dad was also a very good spiritually. So we had a good combination, and my brother and myself still love God first, and then we still love our church second. And I can tell you for sure that was a very important balance to have as growing up as a child whose dad is a pastor.
So growing up, like it's been interesting actually. Like you're the third person that I've spoken to, and I've sort of got my next person I know that I'm speaking to, Will, didn't have this sort of growing up experience, but you're the third person in a row where mum and dad have been really key spiritual figures for them, and not just spiritually but relationally as well. So would you say that they were your main influences growing up, or
That's right. My dad and my mom, they realized long time that you cannot rely on church to bring up your sons in our case to be a follower of Jesus Christ. They realize, despite they love the church, despite they all serve the church all their lives, they realize there is a very serious personal responsibility as a mom and dad to make sure that the young boy or girl actually has the best possible experience of God and church. So they are definitely my biggest spiritual influences for sure.
Yeah, and it's interesting that you separate the two, right? Like, they could of God and church, like while they're sort of intricately connected, right?
That's right.
Experience. If you have a bad church experience, you're gonna it's gonna be very hard to have a good perspective of God, and
that's
sort of
right, yeah.
And vice versa. If you have a bad perspective of God, it's gonna be hard to have a good church experience. Was there anyone maybe like in your teenage years or something growing up that was outside of mum and dad was a key influence for you? Maybe a mentor or something like that?
So when it comes to Serbia really, we didn't even know what a really mentor is. In other words, it's like you have your family, and if these guys don't teach you a trick how to live, how to survive, how to produce something, nobody will kind of stuff. It was we lived in a city environment majority of the time. It was not like in a village, but actually people took interest in you. So there were good people always in the churches where my father was pastoring and I lived. And there was a lot of good people who would give me good advice on this, on that. Yeah. But I don't have actually particular one person.
There's not somebody that stands out in your mind that had like a really
positive influence. I had a good mentor later on when I became a youth pastor, and that's very clear to me. But during the growing up period, I need to say this: majority of people who had influence on my life, they were all the members of the church. So usually like a grandfather or grandmother, and people who actually, by the action showed they loved us. And
that's a really cool thing, because just in the episode that's being released tomorrow with Leslie, she grew up in, there was only a couple of kids in the church and a lot of older members, but the older members were really active in engaging the kids. Like they would really active in Sabbath school. They'd take them out for fish and chips, and they really cared for them.
That's right.
And so that intergenerational connection has been really key, like in those relationships. Tell me about this person that was an influence later on.
So when I came to UK, I came in 2001. I had to, my mom and my dad, coming from Serbia, they borrowed £1,800, which was a 1/4 of the year for Newport College. Wow. They gave me the money and they said, "Listen, son, this is all we have, and this money is not even ours. So you will have to find a way to work and pay for school." They bought me an open flight in case I couldn't do it anymore, so I can actually just make a phone call and come back. And so I went from to Newport College, had 5-6 jobs, majority of time, 50-60 hours minimum. I was working a week, and then my full-time studies on that. And during that time, we had a starting conference, youth director, J-Foot de Oliveira, which is a founding member of the One Project. And
I'm trying to get him on the podcast.
Very good. He's top guy, funny as well. Also funny face, just let you know. And he saw me as a student. He saw I was working hard, and he invited me to a few different projects, and we worked together from that point on. And Jeffrey was like my mentor for youth ministries. He really gave me a very good basis on which I was able to grow. I was able to learn many things, and also sometimes things which not to do, but very few of those. So Jeffrey was the really good big brother during this time, and very much I still love that man, despite we don't see each other as much as we used to. But Jeffrey was very important, because he was always on the edge of doing something crazy good, and I always loved being part of doing something, and so it was a good combination. And God has given me these amazing years with J-Foot as my mentor, as he was a youth director for Southern Conference. And then of course, then after that, there was a moment he just had to go. And
well, the moral of the story is don't marry an American, because they'll make you move to America. So really, everyone listening,
that's right.
But no, but so how old were you when you left? You leave your family behind, move to a completely different country. Imagine like English would have been really tough. You would have known bare minimum probably English. How old were you when you go to Newbold and doing all this stuff?
I was 18 years of age.
Yeah.
I was 18, just finished secondary school in Serbia.
Yeah.
Took a flight and came to England. Had to learn English. I went to School of English first, and I had to get jobs. I never had a job in my life in Serbia. it was wartime. There was no jobs for adults pretty much sometimes. So so never had a job in my life. The moment I landed, I had a cleaning job in office, and that was the first of the jobs. And then I had an additional 5 after that. So it was not easy. And then when I finished my school of English, I started studying theology, and that was even harder because now I had to learn Greek in English. Like I have to learn the language which I don't know in the language which I don't know. It was just like it was.
Even theology English, like I clearly remember writing essays, and you're putting in words, and like the word is going, this isn't a real word, but like it is the you're like it has its own it is its own language in and of itself. So yeah, I can't imagine having to do that from
So that was
another
a hard time.
step further. Yeah, tough.
Yeah, very much so.
So, but like, I'm just sort of thinking on, you know, for my own journey, like I sort of had this coming of age experience when I spent the better part of a year living in Tanzania doing volunteer kind of work. And before that, like I really probably, you know, was still very immature and adolescent kind of thing. But spending that year, like by yourself to a large extent and out of your comfort zone, and really sort of forced me to grow up. It seems like you were getting thrown in the deep end, right? Like leaving home, 18, like you said, never had a job because of the circumstances of growing up, dropped in this completely foreign country. You barely speak the language. You have to go to school. You have to work ridiculous hours. I imagine, like, do you look back on that time as sort of in a bittersweet kind of way, like now?
It's very interesting, Dan. I actually, when I look back, I realized I was never a student.
Yeah,
I was never a student, and it's just like I had to always be a worker.
Yeah,
and despite just living in Newport College, eating there, and going for classes, a real struggle was always financial. I remember when they asked me when I arrived at Newport College when I'm going to pay the rest of the fee because I only had a 1/4. I went to my room and I put the hand in my pocket and I pulled 7 1-pound coins in my pocket, and that was all I had. And I remember it was really hard. And once when I received a sponsorship for my master's, because the Southern Conference thought I actually could work for them. I remember this was the first year I felt like, oh, I can cut down on work a little bit. And I did a little bit cut down on work. And that was the year when my father died. And it was like the 1 year I was able to actually experience what it means to be a student. It was really a hard year for me and my family. And so altogether, when I look back, I'm sometimes wondering how I did it. Sometimes I'm wondering, would I be able to do it again?
Yeah.
And you're right. It is bitter and sweet. I am very glad I finished everything on time. I finished all the classes. I'm very thankful to God for that sponsorship for my master's.
Yeah.
But reality is that I wished I had maybe a little bit more of a crazy time at New York College. In other words, like just to be doing nothing. You know. I used to love singing.
More time to just do whatever you wanted to do.
Yeah, that's right. I couldn't sing because I had to work. I couldn't play basketball. All these things, but hey, you have to pay a price sooner or later. But you're gonna pay, you know, when you're young or when you're old, you have to pay a price. So you just need to choose when you're gonna do it.
Yeah, but you know, like I wonder though, like, because it's experiences like that are forming, right? That you know, like that would have been that 4 years or however long it would have been a really forming kind of year for you. And in my conversation with Ray, in episode 1, we sort of talked about resilience and patience, and I think a lot of ministry and pastoral ministry and, you know, church ministry requires a lot of resilience, right? And a lot of patience and a lot of endurance. And so I wonder, you know, like that you've gone through this really difficult time and years of it, and I'm sure you would have loved a break in that time. But you know, if it's sort of given you this gave you this resilience that sort of sets you up for a unique probably career in ministry that you've had over the last 10 years. It's not the standard path in ministry that you've sort of taken. Because so you graduate, you go work for Southern England Conference.
Yes.
What happens then?
First of all, just to say, you're right, Dan. These years changed me. I remember first time I was able to. I actually missed my brother's wedding. My only brother. I couldn't go home. I didn't have money to go home, and then all of this really makes you a little bit more ready for life. I can tell you for sure. As you said, Dan, so many times we don't see results. But if you don't believe, sometimes I say this for the pastors, it's like, this is so true for me at least. I said to my friend as well, if you're the only crazy person in the room to believe that this is possible, you have to be that person. Sometimes our churches, sometimes even friends don't believe this is never going to work. Or sometimes they're like, well, this is important, this is not even real stuff, kind of. It's like sometimes I look back and I say, these years set me up to be the last believing person. So when everybody's saying like it's not possible, you're never gonna do it, all these things, I'm like, well, I'm gonna just keep pressing, because results are not easy. Results are not so visible always. It is never easy. A time when people are questioning you and sometimes even challenging you, like, hey, Dan, are you serious about this? And you start questioning yourself. But these years behind me actually taught me a couple of things. Number one is you don't have to be the smartest and the best looking guy or girl. You just have to be the hardest working. And I figured out that. So I didn't pass my school because I was smart, man. I can tell you I'm not academic. I passed it because I just work harder than my friends.
Refuse to fail.
Yeah, I'm like, guys, listen, I cannot go through this year again because I will have to earn the money again. You know how difficult this is. So what I would do is like every free moment, I would like, you guys go do whatever you want to do. I have to study. And so I went through. So number one was like, you need to push and work harder. And so this is, I'm not saying I was working harder than everybody else, but I work, really hard. And the reality is that taught me ministry. That in order for people to follow and do stuff, you have to really be running for them. Now I work in a union. I'm trying to set example as well for my conference directors, mission directors, which are amazing people, by the way. It's just like, I have to be pushing hard, and that's what I do. And my friend, you know what? You need to believe sometimes, be that crazy person to say, yeah, I'm gonna push and see what happens. So that's for sure. After I finished Bible College, I actually got picked up by Southern Conference, and then I was working for 4 years as a youth pastor at Stamford Park Church. Amazing place, still my local church, by the way.
Oh, wow.
When I have a moment of, my family goes there. And so, and then after that, I served there for 4 years, 5 years actually, 5 years as a teens director, a teens ministry director, which is a little bit different maybe than other places. Teens ministries are focusing on the teenagers which are not pathfinders. So that was my area.
Yeah. And that was for the Southern England Conference.
Yes.
And then to the union.
And then after that, when I gave absolutely everything I could, and then this is so sad, I need to say this. Don't tell anybody, all right?
Okay, just between me and you.
Yeah, between you and me. I every December, I would have a Teens Day of Fellowship. We would have like 1,500, 600, 700 teenagers coming together in one place.
Yeah.
It was just beautiful in London, Emmanuel Center. And this year, somebody launched the rumor. It's just crazy stuff. And somebody said, actually, there's going to be a fight, potentially even a stabbing on the Day of Fellowship. For everybody who listens to this, yes, this is an Adventist event, but you also need to remember that I work with young people who live majority in London, because this was that regional. And for somebody who doesn't know too well, London loses every year.
That's a big problem in London.
That's right. Loses about 300 young people to the knife crime. And so when that rumor was launched, which was so bad, I was getting 100 phone calls a day. It was just like
parents would have been freaking out. Yeah.
That's right. So parents are calling me. pastors are calling me, kids are calling me to call their parents to tell them that it's going to be all right.
Yeah,
It's just like it turned into a massive problem. And on top of that, you need to run the event. For everybody who doesn't run events, they're like, that's easy. You run one, and then let me know how it goes. And I was beaten to the ground. And this is true. This is. I was going to. We provide food for everybody. So you can imagine feeding 1,700 people. It's just crazy logistics. And I was sitting in a car in a shop, waiting for the water to be delivered. It was a van or a car, and I remember then I was thinking how to persuade my wife. It is time to move to Australia. That's exactly what I was thinking. I'm like, I cannot do this. Yeah. I was so beaten to the ground, Dan. It was unbelievable.
Man, you just needed to send me an email. I would have put in a call for you.
I was just like, I was doing for 5 years. Dan, I was flat out because I have a really strong consciousness on my work. I just like, if I don't feel that I'm doing everything I can, I feel not good. And as I was sitting in the car, thinking how to tell my wife maybe it's time to go. I actually I received a phone call, and the phone call came from the treasurer, which is just working right now. And he said, Dan, hey, would you like to come to the union? And I said, man, I said I would love to come to the union, and I was just like so burned at that stage. Yeah, I was so burned at that stage. And then this is so funny. I get a phone call that same night about 4 o'clock in the morning from Australia. No. I can't say from where. And they say, would like to be a conference youth director here. And I said, my friend, I wanted to come to Australia about 10 hours ago, 8 hours ago. You missed it. If you call first, I would definitely say yes. Yeah. But I said, my friends just call me and I'm going to stay and serve here. So Dan. Yeah.
So I don't want to say it was a mistake, but no.
You might be right, but God always opens the door. And you know what? Yeah. God was faithful to. God was faithful to me because God always had a one door open in front of my face. Kind of, I never had like too many choices. My papers, my visas, my everything. There was like a one door, and I learned to trust Him. And so as this door opened, I was like, I'm gonna take that. God was faithful with that call, and God was faithful for these years I served here. And so then maybe one day when I grow up, but until then, I have to stay.
Oh, look, that's. I think they need you, but I think there's an interesting lesson in there, for sort of not just people in ministry, but people just in life and working and that kind of thing. God was faithful in that He gave you an out, like in that in that space where you were in like a bad sort of you needed the break kind of thing. I recently came across this sort of quote where it said you can't be surprised to end up bankrupt when you're constantly pouring out more than you're pouring in. Right. So like if you're constantly pouring out more than you're pouring in, you can't be surprised to end up bankrupt. So it's, if you're constantly spending more money than you make, then you're going to end up bankrupt.
It's so true.
If you're constantly spending more energy than you're putting in, then you're going to run up depressed or burnt out or whatever. So what, and maybe have you learnt from that experience around, because in some ways, what you sort of, and it's almost like the youth director's badge in some ways, where it's a workaholics kind of badge. It's they are so committed to the job, and they so love the job, and they love the ministry, and they love the impact that it has and the role that it is, that they will constantly be pouring out and doing bigger and greater and more and whatever. And there's a long trail of burnt out youth directors, right? Probably around the world. Have you learned anything from sort of that experience? And maybe now, like you've got your babies, and that sort of thing. Like, have you managed to sort of figure it out a little bit more? Like,
I did learn a lot, and but also you need to know then as the nature job a little bit changed as well. When I was directly taking care of my teenagers, which was like so beautiful and
it's
so tough at the same time.
More hands-on. Yeah.
That's right. Now my only job at the moment really is to have the vision and also to be the biggest supporter and the fan of my Pathfinder youth teams directors across the conferences and mission field. And so despite we still run events, the union events like Camp Paris and rally days and a few other things we do together. We had even day of fellowship for the youth for the union because we are geographically much smaller than you guys. We are still able to do this. Yeah. So we don't do too many events because that's not our job. That's not our direction. But it's very important to bring the union together. Unity is very important in all of this. I was able to actually heal from because there was this constant worry. And so at the moment, the job role change and job direction maybe a little bit change. But certainly I still work a lot, but I'm able to balance it to the point it actually does not burn me as used to. And I can tell you that, man, my last summer camp, dude, that was so hard. If I didn't have a team like I had, I think that would not be possible. So I had to come out and say, okay, listen, there is limits, there is a line, and I think it's not healthy anymore for you. So I learned big time then.
Yeah, no, that's cool. Now I wanted to sort of go back to when we first met, and that was in Perth in 2013, I think, at Easter Camp, and that was my first ever experience running a teen division, and I'd never really seen myself as someone being particularly involved in youth ministry or anything like that. That hadn't really been my ministry experiences leading up to that sort of experience. And I was kind of, through different things being shuffled around, dropped in the deep end like a couple of months out of this event. And you came, and I just remember you like having, it wasn't even this intentional sort of thing from you, but it was just this, you took on a mentoring role, and I don't think you even really realized that you took on a mentoring role. And it would, I was clearly like out of my depth, like stressed out of my brains, running this camp, and you're up at 6, you're going to bed at 12, and you're just burning yourself through this time. And I remember there was just these moments where you would sort of just share things that you did in England, or share things, and it was just these bits of wisdom that you'd kind of drop in my lap. And what it did for me was it took what I thought teens could be, and really like 100 times what it was possible. And in the sort of subsequent years from that, we saw like this massive growth in numbers, but in spirituality in teens in WA, which was really, like, I still look back now as it being one of my most like, it was a really challenging time, but it's one of my most satisfaction things that I get satisfaction out in ministry. Like there were things like we were, in the subsequent years, we were breaking up into prayer groups, and kids were going outside and praying in groups together, and then coming back into the meeting like after like the prayer time had finished, and we would have kids get up and sort of give a testimony about something that had been going on in their life, and another teen would get up, and they might not have ever even met this person, and sort of pray for them, and like this really like massive spiritual kind of things that you wouldn't get adults to do, right? Like in a lot of situations, just this super high level spirituality. How has your youth ministry, I guess, it's a very long-winded way of getting around to a question, but I just sort of wanted to put it into context. How can we better empower teens in their spirituality? Because I know that's something that you're really passionate about, and that kind of thing.
This was a time as well for me, Dan, as you know, I didn't even know that this is the things you picked up from what I was doing here in England, but this was a time as well where my perspective of the teens ministries changed a lot. You see, my friend, as you probably thought, and I thought the same way, by the way. I thought, well, if I keep my kids in church, that's really successful. And as long as they don't go on a phone straight away, it's really successful.
Yeah.
And so my standards for the ministry of actually on that level, kind of, let's make sure they're in church, they're in our building, whatever it is, and let's give them some Jesus. Hopefully they'll pick up something, and one day they'll make a decision.
Yeah.
And what we did is like, that's, I have a good friend, Nana Bonnie, who is a man who was a part of my teens team, who changed me 100%. And he said to me, "Damn, that's not going to work. They're going to just walk away to the next, 5 exits straight, And he and myself and George, 3 of us, worked so hard to figure out how do we give them more than they're expecting or we're expecting. And we realized the biggest issue with our teenagers, they don't have that conversion story. They don't have that moment where God becomes alive in their life. And what we realize is that we can achieve this through prayer and through testimonies. And we ran this program, which was called Prayer Fair Conference. Where teenagers will come just to see their friends, and they would leave this, and then parents will call us. They will say, "What happened to my child? My child is praying. My child is actually, my child said, I don't want to watch so much TV these days. I want to actually play more piano so I can play in church." So what we decided to do is to, for sure, have almost every evening a time where young people can share the testimonies. Reason for that, as how hard it is to make a teenager to share a testimony, is because we realize that because they don't experience God in their life so easily, the person who does experience actually is able to share God with them through their experience.
Yeah.
And that's what we did. Every single the Prayer Fair Conference, we used to have 2 of them. We would every single day have this evening session where people would share the testimonies. And then as they share the testimonies, we would ask somebody to pray for them. And we were able to see the transformation in their lives.
Yeah.
So if you look at the spirituality of teenagers and young people, the many research groups, including Barna Group, actually said young people are searching for spirituality in their life. Just look at them. Yeah. But they're maybe not searching for the spirituality which their parents have.
Yeah.
And the reason for that, they're saying, is simple. And that is because the parents never shared experiences of God with if you ask majority of the parents, did you share your story when you gave your life to Jesus? Your majority will actually say no. Or if they did, it was really a long time ago. There was not this moment of, so because young people don't have experience and they don't have experience of others, so they can live those experiences, we realize that we are just a fun group, which also needs to be, by the way, it needs to be really fun and good.
Yeah.
And we were losing our young people. So what changed me is to realize that the young people can actually lead the way 100%. And what happened is, in so many cases, the young people will go back to their homes and they will become almost the priests of the homes. In other words, they're like, "Hey, let's pray about this." Young people bring their problems and we pray about them. And some of them God would answer, and they will share the testimony in front of all the teenagers. I can tell you story after story, and we realize maybe this is the most powerful way that we can drive forward teens ministries, and that is through prayer, through testimonies, and creating safe places where they can be shared, and also we encourage each other. So that's what we did, Dan. And I guess I probably at that stage came from that, and maybe maybe that's where we ministered together.
It definitely rubbed off for us in WA, and I remember like we actually had like a bona fide miracle in our teen shed, but I'm sort of saving that for, I'm talking to someone in a couple of weeks that was a part of that as well. So stay tuned for the miracle in the teen shed.
Yes.
But I remember I think it was my 3rd year running it. And look, I really don't think the program that we ran was any better in terms of like quality wise of what had been happening previously by any stretch. In some ways, I think like we probably weren't as good. Like that, like they did a lot more like cooler kind of stuff. In some ways, they did more activities and did more kind of things. But yet, like we had this massive success, not numerically. Like we basically doubled the size of the place in a couple of years. But we also,
and that's what happened to us. That's happened to us, Dad.
Yeah, to the extent where, like, you know, we were in this shed in WA. We had to have the back roller doors out and chairs out the back, like,
Wow.
because
wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah. So, like, you know, it was crazy sort of times. But the I remember distinctly. I think it was the last year I ended up running it because I moved to Queensland. We had a group of teens that were doing the music, and it was a group that I'd been fairly involved with through school and chaplaincy and different things. And I remember it was the day that it was about to start, and they were there in the afternoon practicing for that night. And I remember, like, I was sort of out the back somewhere, and they just stopped, and they were just like, "Hey guys, you know, we really need to pray, like, for the program and pray for the music." And it was all teens that were in this group. Like,
Yes.
It wasn't me coming over there saying
Yes.
to them, "Hey, you guys need to, like, let's pray, blah blah blah." And it was all driven from them. And I remember almost just like crying because I was like, I was just
Same.
like, doesn't matter if the music sucks now. Like, like they were good musicians.
Of
But
course.
I was just like, we've, you know, I feel like we've made it. It's like
Dan, same story. We started Prayer Faith Conference. We had, I remember this, 87 people.
Yeah.
We finished when I left with 372.
Yeah.
So let me just tell you, I had to buy a foldable bed for camping because we could not put kids anywhere anymore. Why? Because the beds were taken because of people. And do you know why they were coming? They were not coming for pizza nights. They were not coming for social events we did. They were not coming for food, for sure. I can tell you, food was terrible. They were not coming for the venue. They were coming because this is the place they maybe for the first time they met God in their life.
Yeah.
And the same stories, then I can tell you, you know, we should meet up and stuff. And so, but reality is this that this program is running in different format now. But people were, you know, then they were doing they're coming for the spiritual transformation. That was number one. Yeah. And I can tell you, man, we had problems. We had the venue flooded. We had a kid which hit a head on the wall and it was in a hospital. And as I was dealing with all these emergency stuff, you know what happened?
Yeah.
Like
didn't matter.
Like 300 kids like praying.
Yeah. Yeah. Unbelievable.
So when you say, "Oh, I felt I made it," I felt the same. I was like, "Wow."
Because I remember you telling me, like, at camp, you go, "Oh yeah, you know, we run this thing called prayer and faith conference for the teens," and I'm like, what teen is going to want to go to a conference called the Prayer and Faith Conference?
That's exactly
like it sounds
exactly the same sentence. I said to my friend Nana, Nana, please tell me one teenager that wants to go to the teens event, which is called Prayer and Faith Conference. And he said, Dan, trust me. And I'm like, all right, you're older than me. I trust you this time. And I thought it's going to fail, by the way. This is what happened to us.
So, like we were sort of saying off air before, there's this law in sociology, right, where people reach the expectations you set for them, and teens are no different to that. Like, and our society and culture in general has a very low expectation on teenagers, right? School doesn't have particularly high expectations on them. The media has really low expectations on them. The depictions in the media are really low expectation of teenagers. You know, parents probably have quite low expectation on teenagers because they're being told to have low expectation of teenagers. so naturally, church adopts, I think, subconsciously, this low expectation on teenagers and young people in general. How do we break through that subconsciousness in a practical sense, in like a, say, a local church environment or a family environment, wherever we might be? How do we sort of, a school environment perhaps for other people, how do we sort of raise those bars practically?
I think we need to first of all stop limiting ourselves, Dan,
Yeah.
as you did and I did to myself. You know, we start with a very low expectation from them, and then we realize that we never achieve what we want to achieve for a very simple reason. We never actually really try to give them something they're willing to go for. You know, it's like just to be well behaved in the meeting. Wow, well done, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
But the reality is like, no, I don't want you to be that. I want you to be actually a real follower, disciple of Jesus Christ, which actually is, you know, which is, you know, is just an amazing agent of change, whatever they are, you know, like, you know, to glow in the communities. And so that has to be removed for sure. We need to understand that these people are, first of all, very smart. Second, very good looking. Third, they're so good in having friends and socializing. So we need to stop limiting them and in our heads, and then start to take them to the place where we really want them to be. I don't know, Dan, did you realize this in your life as a pastor? It's like I used to preach sermons where I felt my church is ready to take a step forward. You know, I'm like, I think they can take this. You know, and then I realized by doing this, I was failing my church. Because that was never what Jesus did. What Jesus did is like, Jesus was like, this is where I need you to be. I don't know where you are on your spiritual journey. Can you please pull yourself together and let's get there? And what I realized when I started preaching the aim rather than the next steps, I realized church started moving forward. The same thing with teenagers. You give them something they need to end up, and you know, and with prayer and support, you will see they will get there. And you saw it in Western Australia. I saw it in my conference union here as well. So this is what it is. There was one question that you sent me earlier that was about, you know, what one thing I would change about my church.
Yeah.
And I need to say this. It's like, I wish, this is very important to me. I wish my church was just a little bit less about buildings.
Yeah.
And it was more about young people and just people all together.
Yeah.
I don't know if you noticed this, Dan, but we really take pride in our, you know, bricks and stained glass, and that's beautiful stuff. I'm not saying we don't need
a lot of money on them.
Yes, Dan is like, but I realized from Bible, Jesus was a little bit allergic on buildings, just a little bit, you know. Well, so I wish we could actually move away from just like, oh, we need to buy a building. I can tell you, church after church after church across British Union, which put everything in the building fund, and they gave zero to the. And I'm not talking about money. I'm just talking about investment. You know, not financial, all investment. They gave zero to the young people, and they bought a building, and the young people were not there anymore. In other words, they're preparing to bury everybody. Yeah. And then one day, unfortunately, if we continue like this, we might need to sell those buildings. So the reality is that what I would love to change to take place is that we start seeing the church differently. And this pandemic, which is so sad, might force us to look at it differently. But the reality, I would love them to see it. Hey, if we invest in these young people, we invest in these teenagers, in chaplaincies, it's like you will see what the really church could be. But sometimes we're just too blind to that.
Well, as you were sort of saying that, like, there was one story that came to mind in scripture, and I hadn't really thought about it this way, but when Jesus says to them, you know, I'll tear down this temple and rebuild it in 3 days, right? Like, yes. You know, it's a weird thing to say, right? Yes. And they all thought he was crazy for saying it, but if you think about it, like, he's saying, like, their most sacred, their most valuable, their most important thing that if you had to ask any of them what was the most important thing to their faith, it was this building. And he's like, man, I'm going to tear it down and I'm going to rebuild it. You know, like, it's this horrifying kind of experience.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh man, like that's there's so much good stuff in there. Let me flip the question though a little bit and say there might be someone who is a teenager or someone who is a young person listening to this, feeling like they're not taken seriously by their church or not taken seriously by their family, but they're wanting to step up and they're wanting to show what they can do. What would your advice to them be?
For anybody who is young and if somebody who is listening is teenager, first of all, I would just say, listen, you really can't gonna shine if if you're really not clear, who is that you want to shine for. And I have a friend who used to be Muslim, and she was an imam's daughter. And very often we would have a conversation. And I would say, what is the, she became Anglican, and very often we would talk. She would read Bible about 15 times a year, man. She was putting me to shame. And and I said, what is the one thing you would love your youth in the church to do first? And she said, I wish my young people would know the word of God. They would know who God is. And then as she was talking this to me, I was like, why? And then later on in Bible, I found out how first, before you can have the conversion story, before you can have the conversion moment, you actually receive the information. So if you follow Jesus, Jesus will give information to the disciples, and then they would experience it, and then they will become followers of Jesus Christ. And so if you're young and you're like, I'm not sure where I'm with this old stuff, I would just say for you, hey, what about you actually start digging a little bit about this? Who this Jesus is, who these disciples are, why this movement is so important and so life-changing, why this is the biggest rebellion in the face of this planet, and why this rebellion is making and changing lives even today. How is it possible the story survived for so long? And so when you get fired up and figure out who this God is, who this Jesus is, and his disciples, you will be able to know for who you will shine. And then when you have the information, then it's very easy to actually say, well, listen, I can do this and I can do that. Many of our young people who came to many things that we did together, they just chose to be like these beautiful people in the communities they are. So as their friends were doing drugs or alcohol, or as their friends were carrying knives, or all of these things, they just chose to be like the best possible people. And we have a story after story of the young people who just changed lives by just being there and actually following Jesus. If it comes to local church, young people can do so much. They can do AVs, they can do small groups, they can do Zoom better than we can, man. They can make the most vibrant and amazing Bible studies through the time like this. So there is plenty of places they can get involved, and I hope they do, because let me just tell you, living the faith is really what keeps it going to the end of our lives. And I encourage you to find the place that you feel called and you love, and I'm sure God will use you in an amazing way.
Yeah, and I think like two things to add to that would be, one, like it's okay not to understand everything, like the disciples didn't, right?
Yes.
And even so, clearly before Pentecost they didn't get it,
That's right.
Even after Pentecost they still changed their mind about things, and they still they still didn't have like this. You're never going to get to a point where you completely understand.
Yes.
But like God, to take the step where you are, like, is what I would say. And also, like, you could be in a place. So two things, like you could be in a church place that doesn't want to allow you to do things. And I think you need to work to build that trust and to be patient, and to do the small things well. But then also, there's nothing stopping you from doing something new. Like you said, like they can do Zoom better, they can do Instagram better, they can do like whatever it is God is calling you to do, that you feel passion, like it's the intersection, like your purpose is this intersection of your passion and gifting, right? So you could be really passionate about something and not gifted, or you could be gifted and not passionate, but like your purpose is this, where the sweet spot where they intersect, like, you know, just do it, like in some respects, and find the way to do it. And like you said, how God opened, there was always a door for you to go through.
That's
Find
right.
find where that door is. Yeah. Just a few questions to finish up, because I think, like, we've sort of already touched on so much stuff. But for you, what inspires you most about Jesus? If you were to say, hey, what's the one thing, like, about Jesus that you love?
There's somebody who comes from quite conservative background. What really inspires me about Jesus is the thing that many conservative people really hate. Hate is maybe a strong word, or dislike is probably better.
Make uncomfortable.
Yeah, and the most uncomfortable that for people who call themselves conservatives, which I actually consider myself quite conservative, is love.
Yeah.
It just inspires me to the point of, I just wish I could love just a little bit more like Jesus, because and I just saw what he can do to communities that love. I saw what he can do to the families. I saw what he can do to the young lives and old lives.
Yeah.
And I realized that what really inspires me about Jesus is that even the people that you and me and Dan would never be able to love.
Yeah.
And we hope one day we could. He was able to find the love for them. He was always able to see in them something good, and see that they're his children. And despite sometimes with some strong words he had for them, the life was still there for them. So this is the most inspiring thing about Christianity, about Adventism for me, and that is that we have God who asks us to love as he loves, and that love is what I want for me and for all in my church that I serve, and my community. And I think that's the one word that inspires me, and that is love of Jesus.
Yeah. There's in our for prayer meeting in our church, we're going through the book of Zechariah, and in one of the visions, so Zechariah is all about how God's gonna fulfilling the promise of rebuilding Israel and Jerusalem and that sort of thing while they're in Babylon. And he says to them in one place where you're not going to be able to have walls. You're not going to need walls in Jerusalem, because there's going to be so many people and so much cattle. And, you know, you're going to be so blessed, and there's going to be people from every nation in this place, and God's going to be your wall, kind of thing. Like, he's going to be the thing that holds it all together. And like, there's just this picture of, you have walls in that time to keep people out.
Yeah.
And God's saying, no. Like, when this thing happens, you're not going to need those walls to keep people out. This is for every nation and for every, and that is super uncomfortable. That is really uncomfortable for everybody, because you know, like, we like our walls because they make us feel safe, and they make us feel secure, and they make us feel like
you're right,
we have some control. And that's part, like, we were talking about buildings. We like the walls because in here we're safe. Out there is the big bad world. What's one thing people would be surprised to learn about you?
Dan, I was thinking about this.
I am sure you're a man of many quirks.
Dude, I was trying to figure out which one to share.
Which one to share? Maybe the boat is that you lived on a boat is the.
Well, that's weird.
That is weird, but it's a good.
I also have an axe under my bed. Is that like scary or like totally scary?
Well, it's not. Is it standard Serbian practice? Like, it's a cultural.
To be precise, in many other countries they'll practice a fire weapon. No, I'm just joking, man. There are so many weird things, and I do love. I can tell you something which is a little bit less weird. I love parakiting. and I used to do that a lot, and I do airsoft as well a little bit. Other things
that's
is
illegal in Australia.
it's illegal.
I know, it's ridiculous.
Wow,
ridiculous.
Redonkulous. So quite a few stuff. I think people will be very surprised.
That is a little bit weird. What if you could go back in time to 20-year-old Dejan, who's we know he's at Newbold College, slaving away in his 50-hour-a-week job and trying to study full-time as well. What one piece of advice would you give 20-year-old Dejan?
This, Dan, actually I spend the most time thinking about this. And, usually you think I need to pass on some secret.
Yeah.
It's like, I better pass a secret on, and maybe
don't do this. Yeah.
Yeah. And I was thinking, I have no secrets to pass on to myself. Yeah. I would actually probably would just say to myself when I was 20 years of age, that everything is going to be all right. The journey might be really hard and tend to be extremely hard in many occasions. But in the end, it's going to be all right. And I sometimes forget that it's going to be all right. For those, I felt, when I was 20, I love God. I love God today. I love my church, and it doesn't matter what happens. In the end, it's going to be all right. And I think that encouragement, if I was able to repeat myself every day when I woke up and did not know I'm going to finish the essays or find the money or whatever it is, if I was just able to actually remind myself, it's going to be all right. Yeah. Because God has it in His hands, and He never promised it's going to be easy, and it wasn't. For everybody who's watching and who's young and who is actually now freaking out about all this virus and stuff with this, I think the biggest fear was that this is the first time they were facing actually potential death for the young people. Because when you're young, you're never thinking about these things. I just want to tell you guys, it's going to be all right. It's going to be all right. God has it in control. Develop a relationship with Him, and whatever comes in the end, if you're in good relationship with Him, He's going to take you home, guys. And He's going to take me home one day. It's going to be okay.
I think, that's good advice, because I know if I sort of look back to when I was 20, everything seemed like it was a long way away, right? Like whether getting through university or a year feels like a long time, 2 years feels like a long time, 3 years feels like forever, almost like when you're 20. And so it can seem like a really long kind of, and potentially dark, difficult road, like in wherever you might be. So I think that's good advice, and mirrors some of the advice that other people have given as well. Last question: if I could give you a magical power, and this magical power could get everyone listening to this to do one thing every day, what would that one thing be?
You have to repeat that question again, Dan.
So I give you a magical power. And this magical power is to whoever hears this, they have to do this one thing every day. Like, what would the one thing be that you would get everyone to do?
Because everybody's now expecting extremely deep answer. Well, I'm going to just go totally opposite.
It doesn't necessarily have to be deep answer.
Yeah, I wish everybody eat pancakes every single day.
Eat pancake? Why pancakes? Is that
because it's so good? Because it makes your soul, giggle, and your stomach happy, and your face around, and it's just amazing.
Face round, yeah. Well, that probably doesn't. But yeah. Well, and I think it seems silly, but it's probably that. There's this lesson, like if you go and see the doctor in Australia anyway, and they say, and you say, look, I'm feeling stressed, or I'm a bit depressed, or whatever. Yeah. They'll give you like a list of things to do, right? And one of those things to do is to do something for yourself every day. Yes. Like to spend 15 minutes, and it's like whatever it is, like it doesn't matter whatever it is, but you do something for yourself every single day. And for you it could be pancakes.
Absolutely.
But absolutely. The pancakes represent just being kind to yourself with something.
Absolutely.
Every single
Thank
day.
you so much for making this like a meaningful answer, because I could see on your face like, oh, come on, Dan. But you're right. This is exactly what I meant, Dan. Do something that you love, and I love pancakes. I think many people love pancakes.
Well,
so, my friends, do something beautiful for yourself, and you will definitely do beautiful things for other people as well after that, for sure.
Yeah. Look, that's exactly what my mind went to. So, it was a God-given thing with pancakes for sure. Dejan, my friend, it has been so good catching up with you.
Hey, so good to see you, buddy.
It's been far too long.
Far too long. Dan, say hello to family, and whoever is watching this, keep Dan and all of us who are trying to do a little bit more for Jesus in your prayers, guys. We're doing this for you and for us as well. Just to remind ourselves who we are serving and why we're doing it, because it's so important to us. So Dan, thank you so much for the invitation.
I'll be sure we'll have to do another one, and I think like maybe we need to do like a Q&A one or something. We can get a combination of young people from Australian questions and British Union questions, and we can do a combined Q&A project Zoom, and I think it'll be fun.
I love it, Dan. I love it, buddy.
Thanks, man. We'll catch you soon.
God bless you. Bye-bye.